Good morning, Iowa. I'm Nick Learhoff for Scott Casper, and this is St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health talk show. Join us as we talk about a topic that many Iowans face every day, mental illness. We feature the expertise of doctors, therapists, and specialists who understand the challenges we are facing. Our show airs 2 times, 4 to 5 a.m. and 10 to 11 a.m. Saturday mornings on Iowa's Hope 940 and online at talktherapytmhs.com. Join in for the conversation on this important life topic. As we like to say, Iowa, we're listening.
Indeed, we are, Nick. And from the Five Talents Financial Management Group studios, it's Scott Casper and Nick Learhoff. And hey, welcome to the show. It's St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. We have it's kind of a catch-all topic this week. And pardon me if it sounds like I'm getting choked up. I just took a drink of coffee down the wrong pipe. Uh-oh. But we'll get past that. Anyway, it's kind of a catch-all week, and who better to have as a guest than a well-known therapist and the founder of New Life Counseling and Coaching. He is Don Gilbert. He joins us now. Don, good morning, and thank you for joining us here on Talk Therapy.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's an interesting time as Americans, as Iowans, are facing a variety of different challenges. Okay, and I'm talking about whether we're talking about politics, finances, the holidays, COVID. All these things are kind of bearing down on everyday Joe, everyday American, everyday Iowan. And it seems to me the pressures are becoming more enormous every single day. The news, if you don't turn that off, man, you're destined to have some side effects with just watching the news. Am I wrong, or am I sensing that is correct?
No, you are not wrong. That is absolutely correct. There is a huge rise in anxiety and people struggling with everyday issues. You know, you've got kids that they don't know from one day to the next if they're going to be in school, not in school, online, part online. They've got kids at home while their parents are working at home. We've got the election. We've got the fear of COVID, the pandemic. So the stresses have mounted, and families are being stressed to the max.
Yeah, and Don, with New Life counseling and coaching, are you guys seeing a huge increase there at the clinic?
Yeah, when COVID first started, we had probably about 4 or 5 weeks that we had a lot of cancellations, and it wasn't until the governor basically said, we can just start doing telehealth without jumping all the hoops through the insurance hoops. Then things kind of started picking back up, but we are 40% in terms of census over last year, the same time.
Wow. 40%. And census means the population of those that you see or help or offer help to, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And census for St. Gregory's would be total number of beds available or being used.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. I mean, we've seen probably since March, probably at least a 20% increase. But, residential substance abuse treatment's a much more I would say niche service, I guess, in a certain sense. So, but if you look at that 40% that Don was talking about, man, that's a lot of people seeking services for therapy.
And so, Don, what we talk about, that mental health disorder, that umbrella, but when we boil it down, and I did a little research on this, the 3 most common mental health disorders in America right now, the one that you first described, and that's the anxiety disorder. What should people be looking for in terms of, what's wrong with me? I feel terrible. I feel wrong. Something's wrong. And how can they identify that they may be suffering from anxiety disorders?
Well, anxiety disorders are under the category of mood disorders, and, that includes depression, anxiety, and a variety of other things. But anxiety is probably a pretty common one. It's really starts out with the stress, and then when stress becomes to a certain level, then you begin to have anxiety because the body is responding to the overload of stress in the body. And then when people start thinking about things, that stress can turn into a variety of things, from anxiety, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. If they've had any kind of trauma in their background is certainly going to trigger post-traumatic stress trauma. So there's just a variety of things that take place. But, if you're going to have a panic attack, most people kind of think they're having a heart attack. So sometimes you don't know if it's a heart attack or a panic attack because it feels the same. You could have sweats. But anxiety is a stress-induced along with a fear-based way of looking at your world. Some people look at the past and then say, ooh, I want to protect myself from whatever stressors or whatever pain or whatever struggle that I've experienced in the past, and they start projecting those things in the future. So when people start thinking with a lot of what ifs, so, they ask why questions, they try to analyze things to try to predict what's going to happen and prepare themselves. Those are some of the things we look at. It can turn into depression because depression comes along with anxiety. So as a therapist, what we try to do is figure out, well, is it the anxiety that comes first or the depression that comes first? Which comes first, because the others are going to follow right along. So those are some of the kinds of things we look for. Stress is natural. Anxiety is something we tend to create. I have a saying that I tell people that anxiety is your creativity run amok.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like that. Can we use that?
Sure.
Let's get some T-shirts made with that. I think that.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I have an empty store with that T-shirt already made.
Oh,
perfect. That's awesome.
I love it. Our guest, Don Gilbert, you've heard the name. We've talked about him before. He's our guest today, and we're talking about the general condition, the general state of the state, if you will, of mental health in the state of Iowa and further in America. And I think, and I put a post out there this morning on Facebook, and that, by the way, is a whole different topic and a different show.
Yeah.
But I put a post out there that said, congratulations, Paul Pate, and those that managed the election, right, in the state of Iowa. Right. Iowa is a shining example of how to conduct an election. Pardon me. Now, what I got is a bunch of responses. It seems to me things that can go hand in hand. In other words, that's nothing that we as a person, but we as a community. In other words, we as a person can only vote, but we as a community can affect the outcome overall, right? And that's how you become anxious or suffer from the stress that's, part and parcel.
Yeah, when you start looking at the community as a whole, even sometimes you get households that are divided now when it comes to politics and religion. So that can create some extra stress as well. But yeah, when you exercise your privilege and right and responsibility to vote, you've got one vote. That probably matters most on local elections where, you're not dealing with millions, you're dealing with hundreds or maybe thousands.
Right.
But in a larger sense, the larger sense of community, we are, you put all those in a pot, you count them hopefully effectively and quickly in a timely fashion. And then, it doesn't create that much anxiety. But when you have this ongoing stuff in other states where there seems to be some nefarious or at least allegations of such, then it produces an incredible amount of stress because we're all waiting to see, what is it? And then when you have networks, not to name them at this point, that call elections when, they first open up after the voting is supposedly done, and then that creates more stress. And so these kinds of things become problematic as people keep watching the news, and then they become all anxious about things. And it's like, the election's not called until every state and every county is by the election board certified. So
right.
until that happens, we don't know. And so then everybody jumps the gun, and then this is where you get extra stress on top of the COVID, on top of people at home and working from home and kids at home. It's just it's like a tornado or a derecho in the middle of life.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, I do want to, when we come back from break, I do want to talk about bipolar disorder. No, I don't. Yes, I do. I do. Yeah. I do. Don, I want you to know we do have fun with this topic as well. We realize there are people suffering, but we don't want to take life so seriously that we're fearful for turning to help. In other words, we want people to understand that you're not alone. And no matter what you're suffering with, you're not alone. You can't be alone. I mean, that would be a statistical anomaly.
Right.
And when you look at some of the mental health things that are going on with anxiety and depression, everybody, or a lot of people, I should say, what is it, 70%, I think, of Americans struggle with some sort of a general anxiety disorder. And, it's one of those things where if it starts to get to a place where, people take that as like, well, I have something wrong with me, and they start getting down the shame road of just like, what's going on with me and different things, instead of just, getting to a place where they just start going and getting the help they need, and just accept, going through that acceptance of like, okay, I'm gonna have to do some things a little bit differently now, and so that way they can find that happiness.
Well, yeah, I think one of the mistakes that people do with anxiety and depression is they want to get rid of it. So once you have it, you try to get rid of it, and that actually makes it worse. So what we talk to people about is you have to recognize it, but you also have to accept the reality. This is what you're feeling. And then you get people what I call should themselves to death. Well, I shouldn't feel this way.
Yeah.
But if you do, then you have to acknowledge that you are, rather than what I say. Here's another T-shirt. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Don't shut on yourself.
Oh, careful.
Censors. No, that's perfect. Yeah, we at St. Gregory's, we have, part of our curriculum is we talk about the cognitive distortions and things, and one of those is should statements, and this should be this way, and this person should treat me this way, and I should be able to have.
Well, we should be able to go to commercial break on time.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yep.
And we will, or we would.
We're getting signals.
Yes. We are getting a lot of signals. Don Gilbert, our guest. Do me a favor, stand by. You can find Don online at newlife-counseling.com. We'll be back. There's more of St. Gregory's Talk Therapy on the other side of the break. Appreciate you listening to Hope 940. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. There's more with Nick Learhoff and Scott Casper right here on Iowa's 940 for St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Iowa, we're listening.
The folks at St. Gregory were vital in helping me to get my brother into rehab. They were not only supportive of him, but of our whole family. They truly saved all of our lives with their love and kindness. Because of the hard work they helped my brother do, we regained a valued, healthy, and incredible part of our family. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory, setting the new standard for recovery.
All right, welcome back to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Scott Casper, Nick Learhoff with you. And do want to recognize the great one, Danny Bishop, at the helm of the mothership.
Why, thank you, sir.
Good morning, Danny. Without Danny, we're not on the air.
Yeah.
Without guests, without Danny, we couldn't have great guests like Don Gilbert. He rejoins us from newlife-counseling.com. Don, started seeing patients at what, about 8 o'clock Central?
Yeah, we're on 8 o'clock. We have two offices, one in Ankeny, West Des Moines. We have, I've got 15 counselors now.
Wow.
So we start about 8. We have, depending on the counselor and day and which location, we can typically go to about 7:30. We do have one person that works Saturday mornings in Ankeny, but we try to cover, pretty much all day.
We kind of teased that when we came back, I did want to talk to you about bipolar disorders, because if there are three, and there are three that I've identified anyway, the three most common, if you will, mental health disorders in the U.S. and in the state of Iowa, anxiety is number one. Number three, and I don't necessarily agree with the math, but it's identified nationally that bipolar disorder is identified as the third most, dare I say, popular.
Right.
But talk to us a little bit about bipolar disorder, because it's not just something that affects men or women. It affects them pretty much equally. Am I right?
Yeah, it's pretty equal. Bipolar goes two, is bipolar 1, bipolar 2. The difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is bipolar 1 has a manic phase, whereas both of them have a depressive phase. So bipolar 2 is more of a depressive recycling, and the bipolar 1, which is what most people think of. It used to be called manic depressive, right? And so it turned to bipolar 1. So you have a manic phase, and then you have a depressive phase, and depending on the person, they can switch from a manic to depressive and back and forth. Sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes it's sometimes it's every day. It's really unique to the individual. I don't know that we really fully understand what causes it, but typically bipolar arrives in the early to late 20s is when most people are diagnosed or first diagnosed with bipolar.
About 25, the median, I think, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Correct.
So diagnosis may include what? A physical exam, a psychiatric evaluation, and then the patient's involvement charting your mood over a period of time. So that becomes somewhat subjective, right?
It is. Bipolar is one of those that you have to, as a therapist and as a psychiatrist or psychologist, you have to really eliminate other things that could cause a similar kind of up and down. Lots of people come in and say, oh, I've just been on a roller coaster ride. And so that's one of the key words or phrases that we look at and say, okay, if you're on a roller coaster, what is that about? So the difference between people who just have normal ups and downs versus someone who's bipolar is the significance of how high and how low they go. So if you can think of, if you look at 0 as neutral and you have 1 and -1, that would be kind of typical up and down that most people would experience. Well, if it's bipolar 1, you're talking 2+ and negative -2+. And so you're really looking at the extreme of the change, and it can cycle, what we call cycling. It can cycle up and down. You're very rarely very long in what we would call that more typical up and down. Mm-hmm. So that's really one of the things that you look for. But, you can have anxiety and depression, and you can have ADHD, and you can have a variety of mood disorders with some other issues that could mimic bipolar 1. And so oftentimes you have to eliminate those first before you get to a bipolar 1 diagnosis.
Being in your position must be super challenging, especially when a substance is involved, okay? And Don, I don't want to steal any of your thunder here, but just from this layperson's position behind a microphone, okay, you have a individual who has some bipolar tendencies, okay? Hasn't been diagnosed, but he wants to get home or he wants to stop and have a cocktail or whatever, okay? Mm-hmm. Just to settle down. Well, actually what he's doing, in my estimation, is muting the problem. Okay, he's not really addressing the problem. If anything, he's medicating the problem and distorting it. Okay, so it may seem like that first drink is going to make things better when in fact it really truly makes things worse. It starts to be very destructive. The outcome, especially those that are abusing alcohol, and right now we're seeing that massive increase in sales of alcohol in the state of Iowa. The number of phone calls folks like St. Gregory's are getting on a daily basis. Nick, you see it firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where a show like this comes in handy, I think. And that is, we're able to talk about this because we don't want it to be on the back burner. We don't want it to be talked about in hushed tones. Mm-hmm. We want to have an open dialogue that's filled with humor, with facts, with professionals, with people that care, because it should be part of the lexicon, part of our daily discussion, because at any given time we are all affected. And folks, I may be talking to you. I certainly am talking about myself. Okay, and that's probably the best indicator I can give the rest of you, is that I've had moments in my life when you think of bipolar, you have North Pole, South Pole. Our goal is the equator. Mm-hmm. And then anything on either side of the equator. At least that's the way I've tried to balance my life. And sadly, in a couple instances, I've fallen off. I've been very disappointed. I've self-medicated. And I'll tell you what, it was only through the good folks at St. Gregory's that said, you're not bipolar. You are depressed because of this. okay? And then it started to make sense. It all clicked. I wasn't drinking purely because I was an alcoholic. I had alcoholic tendencies, right?
Yeah.
But the bottom line was I was depressed and I didn't know how to vent and get and seek out help. Don, you're the kind of guy that can sit and listen and then boil it all down, right?
Yeah, typically what we do is we listen and we try to listen to all sometimes the noise in people's lives, and then we try to get to the key point. I like what you were saying that alcohol, you can get a buzz from it, but alcohol is a depressant.
Right.
It depresses the system because once the body puts the processes that alcohol through your liver and your pancreas, it really goes right into the bloodstream. And the reason people get distorted in their thinking is because they lack oxygen to their brain, because actually that's what alcohol does, right? Mm-hmm. Alcohol thins out the blood, thins out how much oxygen gets transferred to not only your muscles, which is why people stagger when they're really drunk, but also it deprives the brain of oxygen, which kills brain cells. And so when you understand that process, it suppresses and depresses you. It suppresses the physiological body chemistry. It suppresses the brain function, and it distorts reality because once you're drunk, you don't really know you're drunk or how drunk you really are because it distorts the reality that you are experiencing. So people who are depressed tend to use pot or they use alcohol because it, quote, unquote, calms them down. And so if they're feeling stressed or anxious, they will use that to calm themselves down. Well, what they're really doing, whether it's alcohol or THC and pot, they're really suppressing the brain system and the brain's ability to process information in a way that doesn't distort reality.
Don Gilbert, our guest from New Life Counseling and Coaching. Look for him online at newlife-counseling.com. He has a whole lot of letters behind his name. He's a lifelong learner by my estimation. By the way, we seldom, and Danny, you know this, we seldom put a picture on our scripts.
Well, that's true.
Right? In full color, Don. You take up literally 1/4 of the page.
Looking good, Don.
Yeah, looking real good. Lavender shirt.
That's a happy gentleman.
Blue or black sport coat, and the wireless, rimless glasses. So looking good. You're the kind of guy I could sit and talk to because you look like a guy I could trust. That's huge, right?
It is. The ability to build rapport and just trust people, people feel easy to talk to. And that's why we also have women therapists, because some people don't like to talk to men.
Yeah.
They would rather talk to a woman, So, it's really about building rapport and being able just to sit down and talk with somebody and have them listen. We do not only counseling, we do trauma therapy, we do a variety of things. And we do a lot of aftercare for people who come out of treatments like St. Gregory's. And, we send some people there on a regular basis. At least we give them options they can check out.
Cool.
So I think it's really important because we don't do what St. Gregory's does, and St. Gregory's doesn't really do what we do. We try to team together with other organizations that can do things that we can't.
Well, we hope you team with us on a regular basis because I enjoy the conversation. It only serves to validate that which I feel. And once St. Gregory's came into my life, or once St. Gregory came into my life, things, you know what? The problems weren't nearly as bad as I thought, and I wasn't nearly as depressed as I thought because I was able to assign. I was able to move away from the feeling of guilt. I was moving away from the feeling of lost control. And there's a whole lot down that I'll tell you about later off air, but it's interesting to know that the biggest part was to let people know that I wasn't alone and letting myself know that I wasn't alone. And once you let that out and you're owning that, right? You're owning, because that's a behavior as far as I'm concerned. I chose at some point with the help of my family and friends to take a different direction in life. And St. Gregory was right there on that path. And I thank God for that. My Lord. And I realize, again, I'm not alone, and neither are you. We're going to take a quick time out, and we'll wrap up the segment with Don on the other side of the break. Don Gilbert, a guest, New Life Counseling and Coaching. You're listening to Nick Learhoff, Scott Casper here on Hope 940. It's Iowa's Hope 940. You're listening to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Stay tuned.
St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show, will continue after this commercial timeout.
I can't say enough about the staff at St. Gregory's, who seem especially gifted to work in this field. They were so helpful and encouraging and will always have my gratitude. I made some very good new friends, a couple of whom I probably would not have made it through those beginning days without. Everyone and the programs at St. Gregory's seemed designed and placed in my life by God's perfect plan.
RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory. RelevantRadio.com/St. Gregory.
All right, welcome back to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Scott Casper, Nick Learhoff, our guest, has got to head to his first appointment of the day. Don Gilbert, the therapist of New Life Counseling and Coaching. Don, tell everybody how best to be in touch with you, phone number, website, and all that.
Well, we have two offices. The best way to get a hold of us would be to go to the website. You can do that from your phone, your iPad, your pad, your computer, wherever. You know, most people today we find are using their smartphones. I always tell people my phone's smarter than me, but you can reach us at newlife-counseling.com. That's our website. I am also in the present time, we're getting ready to start my second website, which is drdongilbert.com. So that's going to be something new coming up here before the first of the year.
Do us a favor, be in touch with us in that regard. We'll have you back on when you're ready to roll it out.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
But they can call either office. We have 515-964-5003, which is our Ankeny office number, or 515-225-4006, which is our West Des Moines office. We do have a person that answers the phone pretty much 24 hours a day. She takes messages and sends them to our counselors' email addresses, so we get those as soon as they come in. Otherwise, my assistant Carrie keeps my life in order. So I do appreciate my assistant Carrie. She does a terrific job for us.
I was going to bring her up if you didn't, Don. So good. God bless Carrie.
We have a lot of counselors doing a lot of different things. We have counselors that do children probably about 5 or 6. We call kindergarten up is pretty much what we do.
Awesome.
So we've expanded our offices. We are in our West Des Moines office. We are in the midst of building on a couple more offices. So
cool.
That's been kind of fun to see. But we just keep growing. God keeps bringing people to us that need help, and we keep trying to do the best we can.
Well, God bless you, Don
God
Gilbert.
bless you, Don.
Best to you, my friend, and keep us posted on what we can do to help get the word out for you and New Life, okay?
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me, and God bless and have a great day.
You as well.
You too, Don. Thank you.
Therapist Don Gilbert, New Life Counseling and Coaching. Our topic today may seem general, but really is focused on mental health. Mental illness is a byproduct, right? Mental health is what we all hope for. We hope to have positive mental health, but and I think Don keyed in on the one thing that that I don't try to get across on every show, but I want to make it evident, is that the reason this show is here is because I had a belief that my experience, my personal experience, should be enjoyed by others. To know that that, for example, St. Gregory was my answer, okay? I was going through a terrible point in my life where something I had built was being destroyed by others, and I could do nothing about it. Mm-hmm. And so I chose to self-medicate. I didn't want to go home, because if I went home, I would have to, well, why are you here?
Right.
So I would go to the first bar that was open, then the second bar, the third bar, and by about 5 o'clock, it was time to go home. Mm-hmm. And I continued having the conversation with demon alcohol at that time. And that's exactly what it was. It demonized me, and I was hoping that it would be a solution, but it wasn't. It only made things worse. And I'm not preaching to you folks. I'm sharing with you my personal experience, and that's the most important thing. And I think you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is when you talk about the reasons for the show and what you kind of struggle with, there's a lot of people out there that are probably feel the same way. They feel very similar. I mean, there's all the different models of addiction out there. They talk about, one of the older, I guess it's still, I wouldn't say older, but is the moral model, where people think people struggle with addiction because of lack of a moral compass and all these different things, which is completely untrue. Right. I mean, addiction, mental health, it's the things that people are struggling with, and
it's called life.
And it's called life. Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head before when you talk about the idea or the perspective of mental illness versus mental health. Mental illness is the things that people are struggling with and the biology of it, in a certain sense. Mental health, I think, is a perspective of looking at the things that we can do to improve or counter, in a certain sense, mental illness, So, what are the things that we can do to move ourselves, away from those depressed feelings, from that anxiety, help deal and counter and cope with some of those things that are going on. So, I mean, I think you're right on.
All right. So here's one of the things that I enjoyed. It was the total immersion. People, they don't want to give up any freedoms, right? Mm-hmm. And realistically, if someone says you need to take a break from the life that you currently are now experiencing, take a break for 30, 45, 60 days. Just take a break. You owe it to yourself, to your friends, to your family, to your wife, your spouse, whatever. Take a break and refresh, reinvigorate, renew. Because what you're missing out on is that it's okay to jump off that treadmill. It truly is. Mm-hmm. Treadmill ain't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Okay, the world is not going to stop spinning because you took a little time off. That's what time off's all about. Mm-hmm. That's why vacations are so very important. And if you think I'm selling a little too hard, I'm not, because that's exactly what I enjoyed the most. I enjoyed the time off, the time away. I hadn't had a vacation in years. People say, well, you work in New York City, you work in L.A., you work in Denver, whatever. That may be, but I'm working, okay? I wasn't there enjoying. There are moments of great joy, but it wasn't like I went on a vacation for 5 minutes. I wasn't on vacation. I did a couple things that I really enjoyed, but for the most part, I was doing what I enjoyed the most, and that was my work. Working at Madison Square Garden was a great deal of fun for me. It truly was, and still is. But I always equated it to, as soon as I get done, I'm going to this bar, whatever, with all my friends. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Not all my friends are having the same problems I'm having. Right. Okay? So just taking that time out and reevaluating. And the people at St. Gregory's gave me that opportunity to sit back and to really focus and evaluate what I had become and what my life looked like. Because you get to talk about yourself, and then there's that mirror or mirrors that are around you. And those are the people that you're there living with. Okay? I'm a pretty shy guy. I like to have a room by myself. I like privacy. But one of the things St. Gregory's offers you is an opportunity to room with somebody else. Not always, but sometimes. Room with somebody else that may be of like-minded or just slightly off you, and you get to see a completely different perspective on the exact same problem you're going through. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It all boils down to this. Do you deserve to be the very best you can possibly be? Ask yourself that question, because I truly believe you do deserve that. God intended for us to be the best we can possibly be. And in order to really enjoy this, and again, I don't want to be preachy, but in order for you to truly enjoy all that God has given us, He has included in life, in this whole kit that He gives you when you're born, He includes these little things, these little road bumps, okay? And this for me was a road bump. It opened my eyes, it opened my mind, it opened my heart, and it made me less important as the primary in the equation. It wasn't me. It's us. It's we. It's everything that we are. It's that community walk. And if we can find it in our heart to help each other be better, then we won't be reliant on alcohol or drugs or other substances. We will look for the very best in each other. And I truly believe, and if we can turn to politics for a minute, I truly believe that this election is showing us that there are people that truly do want us to be the very best that we can possibly be.
Absolutely.
And I would hope that, at least some of you, if not all of you, would agree with me and would hopefully understand that politics is just, it's a mere moment in time. The political thing that just happened 9 days ago or 10 days ago, if you're listening on a Saturday, it's not the end-all be-all. There's more to life than just that. Our life will be changed very little no matter who is in the White House, no matter who's in Congress or the Senate. Okay? Or the House or the Senate. It's very you want to have impact for sure, right? But at the same time, America will be okay. And it's okay to know that.
And I think it's, as a population, we get to this place where it's we got to blame this person for this thing or this president or this senator or this,
The blame game.
And I think it takes away from a person's insight into what they can control within their own life.
Right.
It takes away from the standpoint of that every day, every single day, we have choices that we make.
Mm-hmm. Some
good, some bad, some other, right? And it's a matter of choosing to focus on the good. It's holding on to that perspective of gratitude, right?
Wow.
It's holding on to that perspective of, the grass really isn't always greener on the other side, and looking at what everybody else has. It's being happy with who we are, what we have, and being thankful. I mean, because if you look at any certain day, I was coaching football in Panorama or Panora for Panorama High School. Sorry, excuse me. And I remember having a struggle of a day. While I was at work and I came to practice and I'm just, Coach, oh man, I had such a terrible day and this and this and this and he's like, well, you think you're having a bad day. He's like, try missing one.
Ooh, with that, we're going to take a quick time out. Nick, don't go anywhere. Nick Learhoff, Scott Casper. It is St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. We're glad you're with us. Remember, you can always go online to talktherapy.tmhs.com and find all of our past episodes. And we are gratified that so many of you do go on and listen. We appreciate that. Danny puts them up quickly, and we appreciate that as well. Stay tuned. There's more on the other side of the break. It's Hope 940. You're listening to Talk Therapy, the mental health show.
Stay tuned. There's more with Nick Learhoff and Scott Casper right here on Iowa's 940 for St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Iowa, we're listening.
My dad went to AA once, decided it wasn't for him, and refused to ever go back. He was stubborn and confident that he was just okay. But he wasn't okay, and our family was suffering. So we had an intervention for him, and he agreed to go to St. Gregory Recovery Center. There, he learned how to deal with his addiction the way he needed. Insurance covered our costs, and he has been sober now for over 4 years. Learn more at relevantradio.com/recovery.
All right, welcome back to the Five Talents Financial Management Group Studios. Scott Casper, Nick Learhoff. This is St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show. Our topic this week has been general health, if you will, mental health in the state of Iowa and further beyond America. And really the focus has been on, trust and depression and stress, what with, that being locked down, the sense of loss of control. Mm-hmm. But, having that conversation with Don Gilbert, I thought was wide open, but at the same time rather pointed because we're able to boil it down that we're not alone. Right.
And that's the thing is just getting to a place that I guess is of acceptance and understanding that the situation that, we are going through, whether it be mental health or addiction, and that others are going through that, and that it's not a situation that's necessarily specifically unique to us in a certain sense, and I think, before the break, we were talking a little bit about this idea between mental illness and mental health, and that, some would say they're the same thing, and some others would say, well, mental health is the positive things, the things that you're doing to try to improve that health, right, of your mental state in a certain sense. So we talked a little bit about perspective and gratitude and things of that nature. And, when you look at, Don coming on and was able to kind of shed some light on Don Gilbert, excuse me, did a fantastic job and was able to kind of dive into bipolar a little bit and just talk about just the general state of the state, if you will, and what's going on. And I think it creates this a picture, of this almost acceptance. It's the whole reason we do what we do here, of acceptance of, that these things are going on. It doesn't have to be a conversation behind closed doors in a certain sense, so that these are real life issues. These are real life things. You're
suffering publicly.
That
right?
That people are experiencing, and it doesn't have to be one of those things where we can't talk about it.
It's not always you that's got the problem. Sometimes it's a family member, and if you have a family member that's got issues, you don't have to wait for a compulsory committal or something like that. I know I had to go through this, and it was really difficult, but on the other side of it, I was thanked profusely for stepping in and helping that person. Help people understand that it's okay to help, even though you feel like you're being critical. How do you step in and help?
That's really good.
It kind of comes back to how do you have a loved one that's struggling, right? And how do you help that individual? Because if status quo doesn't change, if there's no change in the circumstances in which somebody's going through that struggle, then the behavior's not going to change. It's like I was talking to a family member the other day, and it was just like, well, this person is staying here for free. This person has their food and things paid for, and so they're able to just get their substances and do what they do. But they want them to change. Well, are you willing to change some of those circumstances? And it seems it's like tough love in a certain sense, right? Change some of those circumstances in order for them to bring an understanding that what they're doing is hurting others, and obviously hurting themselves. They just can't see it, right? But getting to a place where that you're willing to change those circumstances so that the behavior will change in a certain sense. Because if we don't provide some of that tough love, if we don't set boundaries and or basically change the situation, that person doesn't really have, if they're not motivated to change themselves internally, they don't really have a reason to change. Does that make sense? So
I think it does. And Danny, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Changing the circumstances was kind of critical. Absolutely. Yeah. But we were there and we supported this family member, and the circumstances were definitely different. And we did our best to help with that. But he had to change. He had to change his circumstances too. He had to cut people out of his life that were toxic and things like that.
There it is. Yeah. There it is. A toxic relationship. In most cases, I would imagine there's very little value in it, except for the person that is toxic. In other words, they need assistance. They need people around them that can help, keep them down as well, because they're suffering too. Okay, let's face it. It's not just a one-way street here. And that's perhaps the greatest gift that we can give you as we head to the holidays. We know that there's a lot of you that are going to be suffering for lack of getting together on Thanksgiving, smaller groups, if any, those that are on lockdown in assisted living or nursing care. We know that we're going to do our best to maintain our program. So if there's a topic you would like to hear us talk about, we'll find an expert, okay, tell us what you're feeling. Get online, go to our website at talktherapytmhs.com and communicate with me. You can communicate with me directly, and I will keep you and yours private. You don't have to name names or anything like that. Briefly describe, get into the conversation with me, and I'll do my best to find, with Nick, of course, and Danny as well, find somebody that can help talk about it, because, again, you're not alone in whatever you're feeling. There's a statistical anomaly.
Yeah, no, it works.
I'm sure it is. It's statistically improbable that you would be alone in anything you're feeling. Again, bipolar, we talked about it. North and South Pole, our goal is the median, which is the equator in Earth terms. But we want your life to be as balanced as possible. And part of that goal is, I think, met by having the open conversation. All right. So the second half of our program today was originally designed to have a guest named Don Boyd. He is the founder of a wonderful company that is one of our great sponsors, and that's 5 Talents Financial Management Group. I said, Don, give me some of the things that people should be increasingly aware of that's causing stress in their lives, okay? And a lot of elements come in to play here. Now, I'm going to address some of them, okay? Within the next 5 years, let's say you're going to retire. Whoa, huge life change right there. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do with my time? Am I going to be able to meet my financial obligations? Am I going to scale back? Am I going to move out of state? My income's going to change drastically, right? And whether or not you had the ability to build a financial nest egg, if you will, for retirement, it's probably more than likely not going to be nearly enough to last you out the now expected life range of most humans, right? So we want you to talk to a financial advisor. They'll have a better handle on what is right, what you should be doing now, what you should be doing sooner than you had planned, and what your real expectancy is for your working life or your work career. Okay? So 5 things that somebody should be thinking about, okay? And they're all very important, but estimate the monthly income you're going to need. That's number 1. Number 2, determine whether you will stay in your existing home or move. Number 3, think about debt and taxes. And I said debt and taxes, not death and taxes, okay? Consider healthcare costs. Will you be eligible for Medicare? Will it be enough coverage for you? Remember, many retirees eventually will need long-term care at some point. Have you planned for that? That is by design going to drain your savings. All right? Most assisted living and retirement facilities demand that you are vacant of any assets. For some reason, that's a benefit to them, but that makes the respondent or the patient individual totally reliant upon that system. I disagree with that. I don't like that idea. Okay, it's almost usury.
It doesn't feel good.
It certainly doesn't. All right. So how can you get some of those questions answered? Okay, I want you to call Don Boyd at his organization, and I'll tell you why. 5 Talents Financial Management is 5 talents, and if you look it up, there's a biblical reference to 5 talents. Okay. Look it up. I'm not going to preach. Again, I'm not going to preach. But get into the Bible. Just Google search 5 talents, and you'll find out why this organization is not just 5 exceedingly talented financial advisors and tax specialists, but people that actually care. It's from a God place. It truly is. They actually care. They've been taking care of my family for so many years. They take care of my dad. And you know how I feel about my pop, okay? Mm-hmm. There's never a day in my life do I believe that Don Boyd hasn't made or helped my father make a decision that's right for him. We're down to the point where my dad has 2 cars. He's 88 years old. Mm-hmm. Got a van. He's reluctant to get rid of the van because it's a wheelchair-assisted van, right? And then he has a smaller SUV. And my concern is, his concern is not having a van that he could use for a wheelchair. He's not even in a wheelchair. All right?
Yeah.
But in the meanwhile, he's going to have to park this large minivan in underground parking where there are underground poles and everything in his place that he lives. So I called Don. I said, Don, what is your opinion? And Don says, I'll call him. He should get rid of the van. I said, I thought so too. I wasn't alone. Again, another perfect example of not being alone in my decision. So, and I want the best for my dad. I do.
And I just to kind of piggyback a little bit off that, I mean, you talk about those that are approaching retirement, but I mean, it's not even really, I mean, there's a big group of folks that like retirement. What are you talking about?
Right.
I
don't intend to retire.
And it's one of those things where, the idea of do something today that your future self will thank you for. I mean, it's
my future self is still very upset with me.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's something that Don Boyd and that team can help with as far as setting things up. So you can experience that retirement. It's like, it comes back to that thought is, what dictates retirement, age or income?
Well, in my case, age. All right. I'll tell you what, we appreciate you folks listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. We went off a little bit off book today with therapist Don Gilbert, New Life Counseling and Coaching. Talked to you a little bit about financial stress. We hope to be able to get into that more in depth in the future as well. We're glad you're listening. On behalf of Danny Bishop, our producer, Nick Learhoff, I'm Scott Casper. You've been listening to St. Gregory's Talk Therapy, the mental health show, from the Five Talents Financial Management Group studios here at Hope 940. And as we like to say, Iowa, we're listening.